Well, hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave, and let's bring in our guest today, Barb Thompson. How you doing, Barb?
Great. Thanks for having me today.
I appreciate being on the show, and I enjoy talking to other vets. I didn't realize how much it was until a while back that when I got out of the service, there wasn't the stuff that we have today to stay connected. There wasn't Facebook, there wasn't social media, any of that kind of stuff to keep us together. So for me now, re-talking to everybody, I guess, is fixing all that. I don't want to say trauma, but just not having what everybody has today.
It's nice. You might as well use it if you've got it.
That's right. All right. All right. So the first things I always ask just to start the conversation is what service were you in and why did you join that service?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've enjoyed hearing your other guests talk about why they joined their particular service. But I joined the Army and I did it a little bit late. I was coming out of my doctorate program in psychology and probably dismissed a little bit by, I would say, the kind of educational sector I was in. Some of my professors were not so happy that I wanted to join the service at that time, but I had seen my brother and my cousin go to war already. It was after 9/11, and they were both in the infantry. And I was inspired by them, and I saw that they came back different. And we could talk about that if you want in
We
specific
talk about
terms, but
everything.
yeah. So I saw that it changed them. And I thought if I am in a helping profession, I don't see myself, helping more or in like a better way than joining the service. So I joined the Army and it felt like home.
So, so what I just heard, and I don't know if I heard it right, but you joined so that you have the experience to help other people down the road. So you knew exactly where they're coming from. This is not the exact same, but in my industry, I own a mortgage company. I want my people to own a home so they can understand what other people are going through when they're owning their home and that feeling and what you go through. And I could totally hear that in what you just said is you, if you're going to help somebody, you want to walk in their shoes as much as you could so that you could help them, because there's nothing worse than trying to get help from somebody who has no idea what we've been through.
Yes, exactly. And I did find that wearing the uniform was good for that instant bona fides. If someone has the courage to reach out and have a conversation about their own difficult times, and even more so, doing what I could as a female psychologist in the Army to have additional experiences that would give me that frame of mind or that mindset or the experiences I needed to just better meet every single soldier where they were at. So I took every opportunity I could. I got to go through Dunker training down at Fort Rucker, and I got to go through SEER School at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, and got to deploy. And I just am grateful for each and every one of those experiences. I don't consider myself brave or a warfighter, but it's given me at least the atmospherics to understand better without so much explaining the difficulties that, people face or just, what their experiences have been like.
So for somebody who's not in the military, who's listening to this, can you explain those three different things you went through? Just, I didn't want to interrupt you and go, can you explain those three things real quick? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because not
Yeah. So,
everybody's in the Army. Navy doesn't
mhm.
have that. So they do have some other stuff, but just because some people listen to this who are going in and they might not understand that.
Yeah, so at the time I went through Dunker training, it was part of an aeromedical training program for psychologists. So essentially, we're going down to Fort Rucker, which is where helicopter pilots are trained, and we were given insight into how they have to train, what it's like in their training, the different bars they have to meet, and also how to help evaluate them throughout their career to ensure that they're good to go, good to keep flying. And if they're down, then how do we get them up back in the air as soon as possible? So, we got to go through some simulation training similar to what helicopter pilots would go through. So I did try to fly the simulated aircraft. I was terrible when I crashed, of course, because I have no training, but it was fun. It gave me insight into how much cognitive bandwidth you have to do something complex like that, especially under stress, and then we got
So
to
is
go
that
in.
Dunker? So that Dunker training, is that the training for the helicopters? Is that what it is?
Yes, so they
Okay. All right.
put you in a fuselage, basically. So
Mhm.
a helicopter cockpit, kind of, and then you are submerged completely underwater.
Wow.
You do time conditions and nighttime conditions. So in the daytime, you can keep your eyes open underwater if you want, and you probably do if you want to, egress out of that helicopter that's down and submerged. And then nighttime, you're given goggles that are blacked out. And so you don't have the option. You can open your eyes, of course, but you're not going to see anything. And so you really, at that point, have to, you really do get the experience because our bodies don't naturally like to go underwater calmly and stay there, especially, when the helicopter flips upside down underwater. That's not a good feeling physiologically. Your heart starts to race, your thoughts start to race, and all you want to do is get out. But it's good training as a psychologist that, not only can I talk about these concepts as far as when you're training stress inoculation, but I've actually had to do it, and it does give you a little bit more insight. So that's Dunker training.
Wow.
um,
So you actually went through that?
yeah,
Wow, that's impressive.
it was
I mean, just
scary and really
because you
fun.
didn't have to, but the fact that you did to learn, I mean, to learn this stuff that they teach, because it's for most people, that is the most scariest thing, being underwater and drowning. And for me, I dove in San Diego, which is one of the best places to learn to dive because you can't see your hand in front of your face, and with the cold water and all the surges that you can go through. So for me, I had no problem with that, but I could see how somebody could freak out. So,
Yes. And
and you may,
speaking
I'm
of
sorry,
freaking
before
out, no.
I'm gonna say before this, I forget. You made a statement earlier, you don't feel brave. The reason I call this helping the brave is because we feel we're brave because we go into danger, we'll go towards it. We don't think we're heroes but mostly we think we're brave. So I want you to understand you're brave. So please understand you're brave because you just, first of all, you went through Dunker training. This is before you told me you went through this. It takes a brave person to go through what you just did. Okay. And
It does. It took a lot of courage and vulnerability, right?
Mhm.
Because you, could fail. Well, just like a lot of things in life, when you take a risk, it feels vulnerable because you could fail, but when you conquer it, then you get this kind of surge of confidence, like there's nothing that can stop you, and fear becomes more familiar, and then the risk becomes more familiar. And anyway, it's a great cycle. It's a great cycle to put yourself out there for. But yeah, and then a little later on, I got to go through SEER school. So most, services, I would think, know what SEER school is, but maybe not civilians. So it's a school for, high risk individuals in the service, well, with a high risk of, being captured or detained. And so they teach you survival skills, evasion skills, resistance skills, and escape skills. And yeah, so it is a requirement for operational psychologists that you go through SEER school prior to working there, just like any cadre that you're going to see at those courses. They've been there, done that. So yeah, I got to go through. I was the only female in a class of 60, um, you know, guys who were in the qualification course for Army Special Operations, or Special Forces. And I learned so much and had a great time.
Yeah, you're probably going, all right, if you want to really get to me, you need to make these things changes here. As a psychologist, right? You're doing good. Now, if you just take a little bit further here, you could really take. I'm just kidding. I'm just saying,
Well,
as
it
a
is.
psychologist, it's different going through there than a regular person going through there. I would assume because the
Mhm.
training you have and how psychology works and everything about and understanding human psyche, that you know exactly what they're trying to do. You know exactly how they're trying to mess with you, where somebody else. Because I remember when I went in, I knew it was a game. Everything I didn't do SEER, but I'm just saying in general, the stuff
Yeah.
it's a game. It's always a game, and you can only beat yourself up so far if you let them. So SEER
Yeah.
training is different. That is a totally different animal. So
And it trains people well, and they end up learning a lot about themselves. How am I when I'm really hungry? How am I when I'm thirsty, when I'm hot, when I'm cold, when I haven't slept in days? And that's really important information, because there's no telling, in any service, when we kind of send you out the door, how much or how often those experiences are going to happen to you. So to already know, hey, I tend to do this under stress, is really, really important information. So you can kind of get some perspective the next time you're in a really stressful situation.
all right, there was one more thing you did. That was two of them, right? Dunker, SEER. Was there
Oh,
one
I
else?
just mentioned deployment.
Oh,
So I was, yeah, fortunate enough to go to Gitmo as part of the behavioral science consultation team, and get to work with the intelligence folks there, and the guard force. And it was, yeah, extremely valuable experience.
so you were in about what, 7 years? Is that what?
Yes, yep. I did 5 years active duty, a couple years reserves, and then since that time in 2013, I've done contracting. So I've done contracting for Air Force Special Operations, and then now I'm a contractor for the Army again.
I assume you like contracting much better than being in.
So
No?
it is kind of similar. I think that the contracting was nice because my husband was deployed when I took my first contracting job. And my reserve unit was also, they were like, "Hey, you're up for deployment, but here we have these children at home." I'm like, "There's no one to take care of them." So I think that that's nice. Just, my husband retired 2 years ago. He was a special forces officer in the Army. And so being dual military, both in special operations, was difficult. And I think the contracting really helped me continue to contribute, in a way that was meaningful without leaving my family high and dry.
Now, did you guys meet in the military, or you were married before you joined?
We did. We met in the military.
I know
Military
that's
is good for that.
is it? Is it? Well, usually, you meet people while you're in. Uh, so I mean, we're 13 minutes into this, and we only got into your first part of your story, but it seems like you've had a unique time while you were in the Army, and now since you've been being out and being a contractor. Um, Looking back, what was your best thing that you learned from this?
Yeah, I think that relationships matter most. Like, they should be held in highest regard. I've served and tried to contribute the best I can to several different mission sets. And I think that's always what it comes back to, that we're always going to be better together, and making the hard choices to put the people first. And it does get hard, right? Like, you can go to JSOC, and the missions are very, very, very important. Um, but if the people aren't there to do them, then they're not going to get done. And so I think that's what it always comes back to for me, is building and maintaining relationships, because um, that's the best way to both make the mission successful, but also make your life meaningful.
Uh, so with what kind of, can you talk about the contracting you're doing today?
It's
Or are
it
you on,
is
uh, or can you not talk about that? I don't know your situation.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
I'll just say, in general, I am working under one of the mission essential tasks that that we do as operational psychologists. So that can be anything from assessment and selection for, special mission units, to helping develop and train individuals, support to intelligence agencies, things like that.
Okay. Now, with what you've learned and where you're trained at, um, what's the future besides contracting? What else are you doing?
So it's been really exciting as we've seen a lot of people retire from the military, or maybe I have just because I'm 43. And so now a lot of the guys that I've served with are retiring either, like within the last few years. And so we're seeing this huge transition from a lifetime, like your whole adult life was spent fighting or in support, and this kind of new transition back out into other types of work. So right now I'm just doing my best to keep up with individuals that I've had ties with and help them make that transition successfully. A couple of them have gone on to create or support nonprofit organizations that help veterans. So I'm doing a lot of that type of work. One organization in particular is called Shields and Stripes, and they took the POTF model, which POTF is just preservation of the force and family. So all special operations forces units have these multidisciplinary teams. So operational psychologists, clinical psychologists, social workers, strength and conditioning coaches, dietitians, um, physicians, all working together to support the warfighter. And that's a really unique way to put people together. But it also just means that, I mean, and you know this, like anyone who's gone to the doctor, you go to the eye doctor and then they say, oh, maybe you have high blood pressure. Then you have to go see, a different doctor for that. And like no one is talking to one another because they don't exist in the same building. And so what we try to do is just make it really easy for the warfighter to get all their needs met in one place. And so one of the unit members that I worked with when he retired, he was like, everyone needs access to this, and not just soft personnel, but our first responders, regular service individuals. And so he created an organization called Shields and Stripes, and that's what we try to do. So he's gotten together a fantastic multidisciplinary team that volunteers and does a 3-week in-person program, and then they follow them for 3 months. And so doing what I can outside of contracting to help heal.
Yeah, because I see a lot of that needing healing. When I was a president of my Rotary this last year, and I started a 22 challenge, because that's what you hear. By the time that was over, with everybody I've had come in and talk to our club and everything I've been involved with, I realized that it was more like 50 a day was committing suicide, and how important that is. And that's why I started Operation Firewalk, which is an event that we put on here in Modesto, California. First year was last year. We had 2 days of it, 2 separate days, and we had an individual come in, talk motivation, and then we had an actual end of the night, an actual firewalk on coals, a Tony Robbins type event. And a lot of people are like, is that really going to do it? I was amazed. My goal was to help one veteran, because one life
Yeah.
is worth whatever that costs us. And we helped a lot of veterans. We're putting it on again this year, May 3rd, 2025. Same place, same thing. We're just going to be one day, more people. It was just last year was one day it was supposed to be. And then we added a second day just to bring in everybody who was going to help with it. So they understood what everybody else was going to go through. This year, we're going to have multiple keynote speakers, and it's growing bigger. Which is good, because my whole goal is just to help vets. And I'd like to have this put on, because I know there's a lot of things out there that help vets, but the more we can do it and the more places they can go to find this information is what I want to get out there.
I completely agree. I completely agree. There's room for everyone. There's so many different and unique and specific ideas. There's never going to be too many organizations out there because people need different things to heal. I know another person who does hikes, right?
Mhm.
And they'll get together these hiking groups and they'll take kind of mental health providers along with them. And some people heal through being outdoors, some people heal through community. It's not just one pathway. And so I think it's so important that people keep doing things and not kind of listen to I don't know, the rumor mill or those lies that say like, there's already so much out there. There's not enough space for you. There's absolutely space.
Well, the biggest problem I've run into, and I've been doing this for 3 years, helping the brave and multiple co-hosts and other stuff, but we run into is there's silos. There's 2
Yes.
nonprofits that they're that close to each other and they won't support each other because they overlap just a little bit. And there's
Mhm.
plenty of room for everybody. And my goal is to have through helping the brave one of where you go one place you can find everything there is by state what you need it's there how to get that stuff because Google's great, but there's just a lot of stuff you can't find. So, and I know there's apps that combat people have put together to help you find stuff for PTSD, but people don't even know about those apps.
Right. Yep.
And we had Operation Surf come over. I don't know if you've heard of them. They work with veterans through surfing, and they get anybody on a board by amputee, arm, you name it. They just teach them how to surf their way, and it's changed a lot of lives. You can watch the documentary called Resurfaced on Netflix. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Shields and Stripes has worked with other organizations, which is why and we're all of the same mindset. So like the Step Up Foundation is one that we've worked with. It's there's space. And in fact, sometimes it's just meeting together and talking. You might be doing other things, but having that person who's also in that space with that perspective and experience can give you some fresh ideas that maybe you're not seeing because you've been down and in, for so
Mhm.
long. So,
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do just to get the person there, because most of us we don't ask for help, and I run into this all the time. And I tell them, I say, okay, well, if you're pinned down, you'd call for air support. So why don't you ask
yep,
for help?
right.
Yeah, and
Yep.
so yeah, I mean, stop not asking. We help, and that's the most important thing is just helping vets. I don't care how it happens. I don't care who does it. I don't care if it's done through my Operation Firewalk or if it's done through anything else. I don't care. I just want vets help. We've
Mhm.
lost so many since 9/11 that we lost more since then than the last 3 wars put together.
Right.
And that's huge.
Yeah, it's nothing you're facing as an individual has to be, uh, um, like a lonely battle, and in fact, just as you were saying, you would call for, air support if you were pinned in, like, you wouldn't go by yourself in the first place, right? There's always some kind of contingency plan, right, and support plan, so, if we look at it similarly, and like, we shouldn't be doing any of it alone.
I know, but they do.
Yeah.
I think it's when you earlier on you're talking about how people don't like making mistakes. In the military, we learn from them. And sometimes people die. But I think what happens is we get out and we just don't want to feel like we failed. And what people don't and that's I own a business. It's different being in the military versus being out about failure. You have to fail in order to grow and build your business. It should be the same thing, but it's looked at differently. And I think we need to make those changes also.
Yep, absolutely. And preparing people ahead of time so to combat just what you're talking about. So when we transition people out of the military right now, let's just say in the regular army, we're giving them like maybe they go to some job fairs, maybe we tell them about their VA benefits, maybe we give them some financial, workbook, right? So they can create a budget. You know
Sure.
what I'm talking about.
No, I
Yeah.
totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I got out, there was nothing. Think DAV was there, Disabled American Veterans, to get my stuff through the process for my
Right.
disability, but that's it.
Yeah, yeah. So something we created at the last unit I worked for is a transition program, and it really just took one person coordinating everything because just like your, Operation Firewalker, there's so many other cool things out there, but people don't know about them, just as you're saying. And so that's part of our transition piece at my previous unit now is like, yeah, we'll give you the nuts and bolts. If you're separating or retiring, don't worry. We're not going to leave you empty handed on that, but we're also going to get into the deeper stuff. So, talk about the grief, talk about fear of the unknown, talk about like, and and discern and discover really like what is most valuable to you, what gives your life a sense of purpose, so that we're not blindsided by those types of enemies whenever we separate.
Yeah. Another guy that we had come over talk, he was he was a Marine for 10 years and incarcerated for 23, and he created a program for veterans once you get out of the prison system to never get reincarcerated again. It was such a great system. It got funded by our governor. And he had to hire somebody to create it, but he did a TED talk. And one of the things is he says, as much as a boot camp in, we need a boot camp out, an actual boot
Yes.
camp out. He goes, the problem is, I don't know if you heard his story, but he's like, if you take a Bradley and you paint it yellow and tell it's a school bus, it won't know that it's a school bus while it's tearing up the streets. He goes, we're a tool of war. We need to be retrained back to not be through whatever it is, yoga, this, and he did all this stuff. It was amazing presentation. And it's things like that needs to be. And so one of the things my plan was Helping the Brave is my podcast, but create the website Helping the Brave that has all this stuff there for even people in going, you're transitioning out this, Barb has this program for this, go there, because to find that is difficult. There are people who know, but unless you know that person who knows this other person, I mean, there's if you need a suit for interview, there's organizations that'll fit you for a suit and give it to you so you can go have your first interview. There's so many things. And I think the biggest retirees, officers have it easy. I don't want to say easier, but junior enlisted are the biggest ones who get left behind. They did their 4 or 6 years and or 8 years, and they got discharged out. They lost their purpose. They don't know what they're doing, and they run into issues. And I'm not saying the other ones can't have the same thing. I'm just saying that I've seen the biggest part is in the lower junior enlisted.
Yeah. And you know how it is in the military, like we love to complain together. And sometimes there's just always this like we get used to kind of this hurry up and wait and all the other things associated with being in a large military organization. And there's this expectation that the grass is greener on the other side. And just like all the other lies that we've believed, it's not really true. Like there's positives and negatives to all of it. But one thing that I think is important for warriors to know is that the military is not the only perfect fit for them, that there are many others just like them that have now transitioned into a different space. And all the skills, even if they're hard to name, even if they're hard to quantify or qualify or tell someone else about, like those skills, whether they're seen or unseen, are desperately needed in the world right now. And their most important work is just, I just don't believe it's behind them.
I totally agree. But there's one thing we definitely need is a transition from, okay, these words means this in the civilian world. You know what I mean? Some place where people can go, okay, he was this in the military. This means he can do this now, because that was one thing that, or even the education that we learn isn't translated into anything else through job. Like I have engineers who are out. I met one at my Operation Firewalk. He goes, I've been out for 6 months. I can't get a job as an engineer at all.
Yeah, and there are people who help with resume writing. Again, it's like all these people who want to help, but you have to know, like you have to know. And sometimes it can be hard to find. So Patriots Path is a great program that we've sent people to that will literally, like, you have to write a resume. As terrible as it is, it's not, the most fun thing to do. And then someone will go through it and say, like, I don't know what you're talking about here. Like, how about let's try to use these words. Because you know how it is. Like, you go to apply for a job nowadays, and a lot of it is like AI. And if it doesn't pick up on certain words, then sometimes, your resume won't even get past the first cut. So
yeah, that's why they have scrapers now to go in and scrape the job. I can't think of the word right now, but not the policy, but the job placement, the information about it. It'll scrape that information, rechange your resume to match those words, so it gets picked up by their AI. Yeah,
it's crazy.
There's so much out there to do. But I mean, because vets used to get out and Northern, there's such large companies who would pick everybody up. They're not the
Mhm.
same big companies they're doing that like they used to. Unfortunately, not everybody anyway.
Mhm.
Uh, Barb, what am I missing? You have a poker face as much as I do. Uh,
I think there's a million things that we could talk about. I've loved our conversation so far. I think that one thing I would encourage people listening is that you can serve, you can make a difference, you can impact the world around you, no matter what your profession is, no matter what your background is. There's no specialty, there's no requirement necessarily to create impact, right? Positive impact. So I think, like operational psychology, yeah, it's a small niche. Not everyone going into mental health wants to do be a consultant in the way that operational psychologists are, but I found that niche, and I think I just would encourage others um to embrace the strengths and the unique interests that they have, just like Operation Firewalk. Like, that's probably not something that you envisioned yourself doing, 20 or 30 years ago, but it's come about because you took some risks and you wanted to try to keep doing what you could to make a positive impact in the world. And I think anyone can do that. I don't think that you need any special training or education or background or experience or pedigree. What name all the other words. So,
well, and how that mine came about is was on a podcast. I was interviewing David Albin through here, through Helping the Brave, and he worked for Tony Robbins for 20 some years as his fire captain. And told a story how he was alcoholic when this and how he got through it and everything. And he was talking about, he was on another podcast, and the lady goes, "Did you ever do podcasts? Did you ever do firewalks for veterans only?" He's like, "No, I never have." He's done it for a lot of stuff, but not just for veteran only. So when he was on mine, he was talking about, I'm like, I'm in. We're gonna
yes.
do it here. This will be the first one, because they tried to do it on the East Coast and it got shut down, kind of like I did at first. But I never say die. So yeah, I'm in the mortgage industry. You always find a workaround, legal workaround. And so, my city, and that was, I trying to explain to people, a lot of cities will not allow you to do it because of their just fire stuff that they have. So you just go to the county, a little just outside the city, just right outside, right in the county area. Not the same requirements, not the same everything else. And that's what I did. And that's how we were able to put it on. We fought with our city for 4 months. And then somebody told me about this one little place, and I talked to them, and that was built by a veteran, and it's a whole story of what happened. And then it just came together, and it came together in 2 months after the 4 months of waiting. So yeah. So, and it's just what I didn't plan on my life having a firewalk in it, but never, never went to a Tony Robbins event to do a firewalk, never did any of that kind of stuff, but I walked on fires twice now. So each night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So, all right, everyone listening, make your own firework. Not your own fireworks specifically, but there's things that you want to do, there's ideas that you have, and there's no better time. Just start taking action, and you just don't know where it'll lead.
correct. And I'm looking to help people, because a lot of people reached out to us to set this up in their area, because and it's more than just a firewalk. The whole purpose of this is a place for veterans to come to get information. So
Mm,
we're going to have VSOs there. We're going to have a lot of other people there. And that's what it's growing to more than just the keynote speaker and a few things. It's going to have other stuff there at the same time. So it's something, and even employment, eventually there's so much more can be done. So these can be put on other places, but then having the firewalk at the end, just to get rid of your limiting beliefs. That's the purpose of it.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the power. Yeah.
Yeah. Barb, was really nice having you on the show today. Do you want people to reach out to you for anything? Because people,
Sure. Yeah. If you're interested in, organizational health, for your own team or individual professional development or just a bit of consultation, from my perspective, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me most easily on LinkedIn.
under Barb Thompson, which,
Yes. Yeah. Barbara Thompson.
okay. All right. Just so so everybody knows, I'll put your information in the show notes for people, if they're looking for it, if they can't find you on LinkedIn. All right.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate you being here today.